Well, the opposite needs to happen. You need to send, and we're getting college kids coming into the trades after they spend $100,000 on their college education, where you go to trade school during your high school years, you don't have you go and work for a good company, you don't have a $100,000 debt.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. This is the second half of my two-part interview with Plumber Mike Lombardi. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. What's something you see plumbers or other tradespeople do that drives you nuts?
You know, I don't like to I pick on anyone else generally, because you never know what the training was. Chances are when you see some work that's not the way you like to see it, they just didn't have good training. So they're not really at fault. That's what they know. But one thing, I'm going to say two things, but the one thing is, when you're replacing fossil fueled equipment, get a permit from the building department, because several things happen in your favor. One is, if there's ever a liability claim for damage or injury, and I've been an expert witness on insurance company battle with homeowners, the first thing the insurance company wants to see is a permit and a sign off by the building code official. So that upsets me. Get a permit. It gives you at least some level of protection that you're doing the work correctly, and if there is a claim. The other thing that happens with that, Patrick, is you build a relationship with a building code official. I have 3 or 4 building code officials that I can call and ask them questions about a specific code issue, or I see something that's dangerous and I want to make them aware, and what should my next step be?
Do you find that they're generally knowledgeable about what they're enforcing?
So that's another really good question. The younger guys, yes, because they're tech savvy. They can pull up the code on their phone or on their tablet, or they've done it. The older guys, my age and older, some of them are just still, it would take them a long time to track something down, a specific code issue.
Is it ever appropriate to say to another tradesperson, like, hey, there's a better way to do this, or hey, I wouldn't really do it that way, is that crossing a line?
So that's another good discussion. And the third part of what I don't like so much about other contractors is join a contractors association. That's something else I should have done in the beginning. You work alongside these guys on charitable projects. You share your processes, your successes and your failures. You have common bond with everything that goes on in running a small business. And when we're on a project with my fellow trade association members, we tease each other. We're unmerciful about some of their techniques. And I have learned so much about what I do and how I do it compared to whatever anyone else is doing. It's invaluable. So I would say, yes, when you're friendly with that person, another contractor. I am friendly with quite a few in the area. We talk about how we do things. Like I'm not a ProPress guy. Everybody is
We should tell
ProPressing.
folks ProPress is a fittings that are squeezed onto the tubing. They're copper, and they have O-rings on the fittings, and they seal that way. Why don't you like that?
And
it seems awesome to me.
Yeah, I've seen some things early on that I don't like. Some small leaks on hydronic systems that have antifreeze in them. The antifreeze comes out of the joints a little bit. I mean, there are times when I wish I had it in a 10-story hotel, and you have to shut down the whole thing so you don't have any water. You have to shut down the building completely. In the old days, to solder a fitting, you can't solder with water in a pipe. So ProPress has its place.
I've had plumbers tell me that you can actually, put on a fitting with a valve on it, a coupling or what have you, and with a stream of water pouring out of it, and then shut it off, which is pretty cool.
And in that case, I would call in a friend of mine if it happens to me who's a pro press. That's where I am. It's the same way. I've done a lot of water main work, but I don't tap the water main. So I have several friends in the business. That's what they do. So I think ProPress it's going to take over everything. They're using it on sprinklers. They're even using it on gas piping now, iron gas piping.
Yeah, I saw that. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. So
it's hard to, you tell me, is there a temptation to adopt new technologies, or are you fearful of them because they're untested?
I wait. Everything I put in my first heat pump water heater. I know you saw one that we did, but I had done one about 2 years before that, but they've been out for 10 years. Same thing with the tankless water heaters, on-demand water heaters. I waited. I wanted to make sure there's a certain level of reliability. Modulating condensing boilers. I waited. Condensing warm air furnaces, although we don't do a lot of HVAC and warm air work, we do it occasionally. I wanted to make sure the control systems were right. That's the thing. It's the unknown about the control systems, the microprocessors and the switching and the relays. And that thing everything's gotten so technical and so small. Even with the modulating condensing boilers, people call them wall-hung boilers because often they do hang on the wall. We install quite a few, but we have 2 brands that we like. And I honestly, I have their tech support numbers programmed into my phone as my favorites because I'm on the phone with them quite a bit, because the programming that's available in these control systems, it's unbelievable. So
you mean to tailor the system to a specific application, you can customize to
dial it in to, for instance, a radiant floor heating system. I prefer systems where you don't have a thermostat. As long as the home needs heat, the circulating pump is drawing hot water from the heating source, typically a boiler, and it's pumping it through the tubing in the floor, and it adjusts the temperature of that water based on the outdoor temperature.
Cool.
Yeah, so having to find that, they call it the heating curve. So trying to tailor that heating curve to different applications for the radiant. So some radiant heating is in a cement slab. Some is stapled up underneath the subfloor. Some is on top of the subfloor underneath tile and carpet. So the fine tuning that, there's an art to it, and you need help. And fortunately, the manufacturers that I choose to work with have really great tech support.
People are going to write me angry emails if you don't tell me who those 2 equipment manufacturers are.
Do I have to tell you?
I think you should.
I like Wiesmann.
It's German, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I actually like the Navian tankless water heaters. They make a combination unit that will heat your home and make your hot water for showers and baths also.
What about old school cast iron boilers like everybody has in New England?
So I have a very specific thoughts on that. And the modulating condensing boilers aren't for everyone. If you have baseboard or radiators or convectors in your home, they were designed to work with 160 or 170 or 180 degree water. A modulating condensing boiler saves you money where it can deliver 130 or 120 degree water and heat the home. When your home is designed with these emitters that need such hot water, you're better off with a cast iron boiler because the ModCon is not going to save you any money. It's still going to have to fire up to that same temperature to make you comfortable. So the other thing with the cast iron, they're passive and they last 30 years plus. The gas boilers, you can neglect them for a decade and they'll still give you heat. Oil burners, not so much. A ModCon, a modulating condensing boiler, has to be cleaned every year. And some of them, like a Buderis, who makes a fantastic oil boiler, but I'm not a fan of their modulating condensing boilers. To clean their modulating condensing boiler, it takes about 3 hours. So,
And you have to do that every year.
You have to do it every year. Wow. In Germany, the whatever the regulations are, the government requires you to clean your boiler twice a year, or they
that
turn
sounds
off your
very
gas.
German, Mike.
Yes, it does. But they're benefiting. They're paying a little more for the maintenance, but the equipment is going to last twice as long. The mod cons are 10 to 15 years. That's about all you're going to get, unless you're a guy like me and you clean your own and you're right on top of it. Mm-hmm. I have a cast iron boiler here, a 3-pass that I love.
I think there's a lot to like about that technology because you can get parts anywhere. Any heating professional is going to understand what's going on. I mean, like some of that stuff is really high tech. I don't know how you find someone to fix it.
Well, that's the other thing. You need young people who are tech savvy. Believe it or not, the young people who are doodling around on their phones can find answers on this modern equipment quicker than I can.
Sure.
And those are the kind of people, listen, we need to attract them to the trade. We need to do a better job of advertising the opportunity with tech-based equipment. And you could make great money. But we're not doing a good job for whatever reason. Most of the plumbers, and I know this for a fact, most of the plumbers are 50 plus, 50 years of age and older. And a lot of us are older than that. And there's going to be a gap, and there's going to be an opportunity.
What are we going to do without plumbers, Mike? That's worrying to me. This is not stuff you can get outsourced.
We're working on it right now, trying to attract people. The trade schools are a great resource there, and you're getting more kids. It used to be when I was in high school, if you went to trade school, you were looked down upon. Sometimes it wasn't a fair thing that the guidance counselors and administrators did. They steered students who weren't grasping a college-based program and sending them to trade school. Well, the opposite needs to happen. You need to send, and we're getting college kids coming into the trades after they spend $100,000 on their college education. Where you go to trade school during your high school years, you go and work for a good company, you don't have a $100,000 debt that you're trying to pay back.
I think you'd agree. Most good companies have apprentices that, they start out making a reasonable wage, right?
They can make a living wage, absolutely. They can afford to have an apartment and a car and health benefits, retirement. All that is that's all coming along. And actually, the National Association that I belong to, Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors Association, they're trying to get nationwide health benefits that would attract more people into the trades. There's some bumps in the road because it's hard to have a blanket type of policy that every state will participate in because states differ. Mm-hmm. But they're getting through that, and they're hoping to be able to offer that to members and hopefully to boost the number of members in our trade association. Everyone that I know in our trade association is successful and operates above board business. The employees get great benefits. So we're hoping to get that, advertise that.
I see service plumbers advertising on their trucks, help wanted. Do you ever see young people at the supply houses or on the job sites?
Yes, we are, but it's a tiny bit at this point. But it's going to come on. It's going to have to come on because I'm going to be retiring, and all the guys my age are going to be retiring. And the fortunate thing for me is I've imparted my will on one person at least. So Tyson is pretty smart, and I'm hoping he'll take someone under his wing someday.
You need someone's wing to be under, I can tell you, if you're learning the craft, because I've said it on the show before, in your first few years, you're a liability, not a help. I mean, you can carry stuff, but it's...
All I did the first 6 months when I had a real plumbing job is I dug trenches and I packed oakum, and we were still running cast iron pipe underground. And they wouldn't let me pour the lead in a joint until about a year and a half.
That might have saved some of your brain cells, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. I realized that. I was happy about that.
Have you ever had a client or a project that gave you a bad feeling? Did you just walk away from it? Did you take it? How did it turn out?
Yeah, you get those. And that's not something you learn early on in your career, because usually you're hungry. You're taking whatever you can get in the beginning, but you get burned a few times, and then you recognize someone's lack of honesty. I guess that's the kind way to put it. Again, back to the 1%er. There are 1% of the people that are just looking to get as much as they can and leave you exposed for loss. And that brings me to something about young people. Again, young people in the business, make sure you have a written scope of the work anytime you're putting a price out there, so the person knows what they're getting, and you have a document that you can use as a reference that can be as clear and concise as you can make it. Now, I have a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, who I worked for a lot of years. All of his contracts went through a law office. So
on every job?
Lawyer. Yep, on every job. And it helped him quite a bit. So the language, not easy to confuse it. And the other thing where you can weed out people that you sense aren't being honest with you, I still use it. I have a sentence or two in my proposal about discovered mechanical defects, structural defects, safety issues, or code violations. Because when you're in a remodeling project, especially, you don't know what's behind the wall, what's underneath the floor. So if these things are discovered and they're not covered in the scope of work, there'll be extra charges. And that's a good thing to have, because it's helped me quite a bit.
I think folks would, outside of the industry, would have some concerns, are these things he really needs to fix? Might be a question they would ask. How do you deal with someone who is, maybe less than enthusiastic about spending hundreds or thousands extra dollars to fix something they didn't know they needed to fix?
So again, put something in writing, good, better, and best. We can do this, and it may last you a year or two. We can do the next step up, and maybe it'll last a little longer, or we can do a complete tear out and upgrade, and you won't have to worry about it for decades. So I really, that's something, again, you don't catch up on that early in your career, but you want to be able to give people almost a menu, and then let them make the choice. You're not forcing a complete rip out on them. You're just saying, here's what you can do. Here are your other options. And if you want to pay less money, you get less of a repair.
From my observations, you seem to be in pretty good shape and you take care of yourself. Has your lifetime of fitness helped you as a plumber? Like, I'm sure it's not easy carrying water heaters up and down basement steps like I saw you do, but you do it.
I think it's a help, absolutely. But it's also, things wear out. I have a brand new hip that I'm pretty proud of. But that's probably the result of too much basketball and volleyball during the course of my life. But I am a little jealous. I have some customers, and I don't ever point it out to them, but they've sat behind a desk their whole working life. They have a little bit better leisure activity than I'm having right now. They play golf still into their 80s. They can go on a run, which is something I haven't done. But Meg and I do hike quite a bit, so I'm getting back into that. But yeah, the work does take a toll on your body. And other things happen. You have a fall, a slip, although I've been very lucky. I haven't had anything really terrible happen, but the potential for injury is out there in the trades. There's no doubt about it, and you have to prepare yourself for it.
Do you have any advice to, folks who are newer in the trades, or what would you tell your younger self? How would you change your behavior to make it better later in life?
Get help. Get help when you need it. Be able to call in extra pair of hands. Don't do something. If there's the potential for an injury, don't do it. Wear safety glasses. I know you've talked about that quite a bit as long as I've known you. Hard hat, safety glasses. We're grinding a sink today. We both have ear protection. We're both wearing goggles, not just safety glasses, because you don't want those shards coming at you when we're grinding. And same thing, just be smart about your work area. So that's what I would say.
Cleaning up, you mean, or
Absolutely, cleaning up. Don't be climbing over tools. One of my huge pet peeves is working off the floor. We bring a sawhorse and a tabletop with us. I actually have a couple of folding tables. Even one of those small benches, aluminum benches that fold up. We bring it in. It looks more professional too. You're in there. You're working on a table. You don't have tools scattered around the floor. One of the things that's really saved a lot of people injury, I believe this wholeheartedly, is battery tools. You're not tripping over cords. You're not having to plug in somewhere with wet hands. We're always in water. Yeah. So,
were you an early adopter of that stuff? Like, I'm sure you were a little skeptical when you first saw a cordless Sawzall, but I bet you got one now.
Initially, but I have a brother who retired from Stanley Works, and they're a DeWalt company also. So he called me one day. He said, "You won't believe what we're coming out with. Battery, everything." I mean, we were on a big project recently, and we don't get on that many big projects anymore, but a fence company came, and they had a battery rotary hammer to drill the ledge to set the spikes for the posts. And that thing ran for an hour.
You can imagine how handy that is in their business when they're like miles away from an outlet, right?
Exactly. And they had a generator, but only to charge batteries, to recharge batteries.
So you need a generator this big instead of this big, right?
Exactly. So,
can you tell me about your own house? This is my favorite part of the show. Do you have any plumbing problems right now that you're ignoring?
I don't, and I'll tell you why. And some people think this is a crazy thought, but I consider it a perk. We were on a job, and the sink got ordered in the wrong color, and it couldn't go back. So it was a big, beautiful, deep stainless, like a Corian sink. So I put it in my kitchen, and then I got a fancy German faucet for it a year later. That was left over from a job. I was on a commercial job in a CVS, and they want their handicapped toilets to have the handle to flush the toilet on the open side, in other words, away from the wall. So the toilet came the wrong way, and it was a beautiful one-piece toilet, and it was going to go in the dumpster. So it's in one of my bathrooms now. It's 6 years ago, almost 7, the supply house was having a spring special on 3-pass boilers, which is,
I don't know what that is. You'll have to tell me.
So it's a cast iron boiler, and the oil burner is mounted just like any other oil burner, but the flue gas doesn't just go into the chamber and straight up to the top of the boiler and out the chimney. It makes 3 trips through passageways. So they're in the 87 or 88% efficiency right out of the box, compared to 80 for a traditional pin boiler, what they call it, a pin boiler. And so they're having a special. So I got a 3-pass boiler, and then they also had a special on a indirect water heater. So I have that, and I have new vanities. I do need. I still have a 3-handle tub and shower valve, but I'll get around to that. We're used to it.
Do you like doing other stuff on the house? I mean, a lot of
Oh,
people in the
always.
trades like to work on their homes either as therapy or to do things they never tried before. Do you like that?
I do. Right now, I'm working on a new fence around my garden, my vegetable garden. So last year, right before I went into surgery, I drove some of those steel posts into the ground and tie wrapped some of that nylon deer
Yeah.
fencing. And Meg, my significant other, called it the Beverly Hillbillies fence. So she wouldn't have it this year. So I've been putting 4x4 posts in every 8 feet. And something I discovered, that quick setting cement where you pour the water in the hole around the post and then pour the cement in. Wow.
Pretty great, right? Instead of
Pretty
mixing
great.
concrete.
Yeah. We're putting new stairs on the deck. We're going to be replacing the deck boards, hopefully in the next month or two. So
Will
yeah,
you get Tyson's help for that, or will you do that all yourself?
Oh yeah. No, Meg and I do what we can, but Tyson will come. He's really talented. He's just got such a great skill set for all things.
And he's easy to get along with, which I think is, I think you'd agree, probably the most important thing for someone you're going to spend 40 or 50 hours a week with, right?
No one can understand how he's been with me for over 15 years every day. He is a special human being. He really is. So much just rolls right off his back. And another interesting thing that I do that I'm certain wears on him is I repeat the obvious. And I do that a lot because
You're thinking.
I don't want it to get overlooked. So he's so accustomed to it.
So you tell him the same things you've been telling him for years and years every day.
Well, not every day, but we were doing some gas piping recently, and I said, it's okay to use Teflon on threaded black pipe, but you got to keep it back a thread or two from the end, so a piece of Teflon tape won't get into the gas pipe and down into the gas valve.
And he's like, you've told me that 1,000 times.
Yeah, of course. He knows. So he just looks at me now. But sometimes what helps me is when we're in the presence of someone, we're working in front of someone, and then I'll say it. And I'll tell Tyson after, well, I did it for that person's benefit because they might want to learn. That's the other thing that was instilled upon me by the first real Yankee craftsman that I worked for, is don't be afraid to repeat the obvious. I mean, it really helped me. Really helped me a lot. And the most important thing he taught me was recognize an opportunity for learning. And it could be from the woman you're working for, right? It could be in my experience, women that are stay-at-home moms or stay-at-home wives, they know more about what's going on in the house than the men do.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Because they're there all the time.
Cases. Yeah, and you can learn from them. So
there's a funny story I told on the regular podcast one time, written by a guy who worked on the houses on Long Island, Levittown, and they all had copper tubing in the concrete slabs. And this guy was trying to find a plumbing leak, and this woman showed him how when you mop the floor, that the leak would show up because the floor was hotter than anywhere else. And he was like, you just saved me tons of time.
I have a friend who lives in the next town over. He lives in Lincoln Park, New Jersey. So the same builder built houses in Lincoln Park right after World War II. He could grow vegetables and flowers outside his house year-round because they didn't do perimeter insulating. And they spaced the tubing so close together. His bathroom was the greatest, Patrick. He had a manifold of iron pipe on 3 walls behind the tile. And they just pumped 160-degree water through it. It's not now when we're trying to temper that. It's amazing.
It's funny that I'm told that there's a few of those homes remaining. Most of those copper tubing systems have failed and been replaced with other things, but there's a few still out there. And the fuel companies can tell when you have the system replaced because you're suddenly using a third less oil or gas, whatever, right?
It's pretty amazing, the savings, because if you're just hemorrhaging
into the ground.
And it's not even, and there was no insulation under the tubing. That's a huge factor in the modern systems that allow us to pump lower temperature water through and get the same result.
I love talking to you always. It's been a joy having you on the show. Is there anything you want to tell or ask our listeners before we part company?
Just, I think the only thing I would say is if you're a contractor, it doesn't matter the trade, join a trade association, because the benefits are plentiful. Not just the networking with other contractors and sharing failures and successes and policies and procedures, but the camaraderie and there's a lot of good people. They're not your enemies out there. They're your competition. So be open to getting to know other people in your trade. That's what I would say. And for homeowners, if you find someone, don't concentrate on the direct cost, but try to find the value in what someone is offering. So it may cost a little more, but it's probably, in some cases, but it may be a better value.
Good advice for all of us, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Mike Lombardi for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Mike, it has been a joy talking to you. Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Thanks very much for listening.